like when we had our downturn, the reason why it affected other countries is because of that. Because everyone is now we've all tied each other's wealth to each
But
other.
that was because that was because they had chosen to tie their economies to our economy. Now that's why this is
Right. We
I've had a
basically we basically we built a giant ass navy and said, all right, now you all are
but what
gonna play the economy by our rules.
but what's frustrating
And
to me is I'll have conversations with people about this, and I'll be like, okay, pattern recognition. We're pattern recognition machines. Doesn't mean we're the best at it, but we are pattern recognition machines. And
right.
if you
Well,
take a
I would
look,
contend humans are actually pretty good pattern. I mean, so good in fact that we find patterns in things that don't have any.
I would say that we're very good at pattern recognition insofar as it's not an abstraction of something that was useful to us at some point. So
Sure.
pattern
Right.
recognition
It has to have some grounding.
right. And what we've done is we've abstracted that ability to recognize patterns to levels where we're getting diminishing returns. So one of the I've noticed this actually because I've been paying attention and actually trying to learn about markets because I don't have anything else to do. So I've been looking at markets, trying to figure it out. So I was like, well, what the fuck is this? This guy's making fun of me on Twitter because I don't know about I don't know about Fibonacci. So I went through, I learned about Fibonacci's. I decided, okay, well, I'm watching this shit enough. Let's test it out. So I started drawing some Fibonacci's on various things, seeing how often it was useful, how often it wasn't useful, how often it was accurate, and obviously it varies. It varies on so many. There's 100 variables, and that was interesting and useful to learn. There's 100 variables. That means learnable. That means if I learn what those variables are, that means I could possibly benefit. So this is a game to me. It's a system to me now. So I like learning systems. So one of the things that I did was I started learning about the other things, these abstractions like XABCD analyses, where it combines the idea of Fibonacci's with, say, moving averages or exponential moving averages, things like that, in order to give you some idea of where something's going to go long term as opposed to short term, because all the things that we hear about are speculative trading, short term speculative / day trading or whatever with stocks, but there's no difference between those. And because there's so many speculators fucking involved at this point, there's no difference or very little difference between those and day traders. So I realized the only difference that I tried to start eliminating specific variables or specific, let's say, not aspects, but attributes between the crypto market and the stock market. And one of the things I realized was none of the fucking people currently investing in the crypto market have any idea about the speculators, have any idea about the underlying value of the particular crypto that they're speculating on. Which is why I brought up Filecoin. So when we say things like, well, in general, something like a currency has no real value. It's ephemeral in nature. It's
a trust. It's a fundamental human trust in the value of something, such that I can exchange it for goods of some kind.
Now, that's where I made that. You're 100% correct. So I said, well, is there or are there multiple cryptos that don't adhere to this schema? Is there a crypto where, let's say I buy it and then I can immediately trade it for gold, no matter what you do? Is there a crypto where I buy it and then it means I can, I don't know, redeem it for a certain number of gallons of milk, whatever the fuck? And
sure.
This is how limited my ability to think about this was. And then I started to find, after it took a long time, a long time in our time. It took a week for me.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, given the number of cryptocurrencies that are currently available and looking at their moving averages and looking at the price fluctuations and looking at the current pump that's occurring, because there is a pump that's occurring. And the issue is, how do you identify which one of these cryptocurrencies, and there are certain people who don't think that it's even possible that there are cryptocurrencies that aren't susceptible to this pump. I think that's incorrect. Given that, what are the differences? Filecoin, which is the underlying crypto for IPFS. Filecoin is mined by building massive rigs with huge amounts of NVMe, relatively large storage NVMe hard drives that you then rent to people to store their data on, so that they have a distributed network like Dropbox, except not Dropbox.
That makes a shitload of. Yeah, I mean, you're basically making a distributed CDN.
Yeah, 100% distributed CDN, which means, guess what? Nobody can deplatform you. Nobody can take your data. But that requires some serious technical hurdles to be overcome. One of which is, I want my data now. Now, the Filecoin rig itself has to verify that data.
I would say the other thing too is security, where
security,
if I own a box, I can't just like go digging through and be like, ooh, there's data in here, so it has to be encrypted.
You can go and take a look at I've got IPFS running on 2 different nodes right now, but they're not mining. They're just trying to strengthen the network. So if I wanted to, I can take an IPS.
I was going to say, but I couldn't go on those boxes and extract data from people who have used those boxes to make like packet transactions.
You could.
I can't go in and be like, wait, what?
You could, because I have no smart contracts with anybody who's trying to rent that space from me. And that's because I don't have currently a rig that is high performance enough to sell that as a service.
To basically be encrypted. Okay, so encryption is a feature,
or not
fundamental. Not
encryption per se. So like you have IPFS. Think of it as it's just like an onion node. So
sure. But I'm saying like but the data that actually moves through that box is encrypted. Like I can't go sniff packets on it.
Yes. Like from start to finish. Like I can't even look at the shit.
Right. Even though you own it, it's all fully encrypted end to end.
100%.
Like, you can't. Yeah. Okay.
That's why it takes so much computational power. Like that's why the requirements are incredibly high.
So what? Okay. Now I need to. Now you've gotten my interest, Pete.
But that's the point I'm making here is there are projects like this all over the place where they actually provide a completely valid utility, but nobody knows it. Nobody recognizes it because they're all too busy speculating, which is why whenever you see Bitcoin dump $10,000, Filecoin drops 80 cents in, based on my fucking... Yeah, I have a very limited... I'm trying to think of some other example, like XMR or Stellar Coin versus. So this is what happened. This is when I learned this. This is when
like Dogecoin.
Well, here's the thing about Doge. The reason about Doge, I prefer to say Doge, but everybody keeps saying Doge. The reason why this is important is because Doge has a different type of value. Doge does not have a value that's different from Bitcoin. It's identical to Bitcoin. Which is interesting because it means...
And it was intended as a meme currency, never intended as something to be serious.
But what was Bitcoin?
Bitcoin was an experiment. It was a thought experiment, I'm pretty sure.
But that just means Doge is a copy of that thought experiment.
Right. You're right. Where it's just like the idea of like, what if we made a currency that was purely digital? And it's just based on like hashing algorithms and like a fixed quantity of... Yeah, a fixed quantity of these hashes that can be made before it finally runs out.
So the interesting thing...
It's a bizarro infrastructure. Like, it's fucking weird.
Insofar as I understand it, I mean, which I don't. Granted, I mean, I understand the basics of the blockchain. I understand the basics of validation. I understand the basics of mining. I understand the basics of hash, basically hash generation and all that kind of shit. But The reason it never caught on initially, it took years, was because
Right.
it provided no utility. The only
Right.
reason it caught on is because, oh, this was the first one to provide a decentralized type of currency, which means it's not trackable, which was immediately cast by the media and billionaires all over the place as a dangerous thing. I don't know if you've noticed this, but recently in the media, when I say recently, the past week, Bill Gates has been going against all cryptocurrency. He's been talking shit about cryptocurrency nonstop. So
Yeah,
functionally,
well,
there's
it's
no
because
difference
well, it's
between
because well,
Doge.
it's because his wealth is not tied in that, and so he has.
I don't believe for a
It's it,
second that he doesn't have $1 billion in fucking Bitcoin.
well, I mean, when you got billions sitting around, I guess you might as well just
Why
invest
wouldn't
that
you?
much. Yeah.
Well, there's a
You
reason why you
imagine.
wouldn't. It's because you don't want to support it. You don't want it to come up. You don't want it to become useful. But even within all of that shit under that umbrella, there's two types, generally speaking, of cryptocurrency. Have you heard of Polkadot?
No, I haven't.
So it's one of these. What you'll find is people are trying to pump coins, and so you'll hear about certain coins.
Right,
That's
right,
why.
right,
That's why I
right.
bought
Everyone's,
Cardano.
everyone's just trying to do get rich quick. I mean, and this is true for cryptos for a while now. They've been trying to do get rich quick schemes for a long time.
Oh, of course. But
Trying to
one of the
make-
things that interesting things that occurred as a result of that was, fuck, we can make money. Tricking people isn't working anymore. All of these things, or some of these coins, took off. What does that mean? What is that gonna mean for them? What do they need now that they've taken off? Polkadot is an interesting example of, I haven't put any money into it because it's too expensive for me. But Polkadot, my understanding of it is based on, I haven't read the white paper, but I've read the documentation on their website. My understanding is the entire idea behind the project Polkadot is to create parachains. And the parachains are going to link different blockchains, major blockchains, so that you can instantly change Bitcoin to Ethereum, and these parachains will validate the transactions super fast. Because that's what this is about. So, and this brings me back to Filecoin, because one of the things, the reason why I came to this conclusion, and I could be wrong, but one of the reasons I came to this conclusion is because I was sitting on Coinbase, and I was like, I need to get some money into Kraken. But I can't get money into Kraken, because Kraken only accepts ACH transfers. Can't do that. All these other exchanges accept debit transfers. I don't want to fucking pay a huge premium like that. So what was my idea? My idea was, I will buy $350 worth of Filecoin. That's roughly 6.6 coins. And then, and by the way, I picked this purely based on its performance at the time. So I took a look at its performance at the time. It's gone up a lot. It's going from $25 to $50 in the past week. Well, it'll be okay for the next 5 minutes. Okay, cool, great. So I sunk $350 in a Filecoin, and I transferred it to Kraken. And then I waited. And then I waited longer. And then Filecoin dropped $3. And then Filecoin dropped another $250. It took about an hour and a half. And I had already lost $70. Now, why did it take an hour and a half? Because Filecoin is not about transacting quickly. There are cryptocurrencies that are about transacting quickly. Filecoin isn't one of them. Neither is Bitcoin, which is one of the reasons why cross-exchange, let's say cross-exchange manipulation or exploitation is so difficult. Because the transactions themselves need to be verified within the blockchain before you can even do anything. I didn't look into it. I could have. And immediately after I was like, where the fuck is my Filecoin? I pulled up Kraken's list of expect wait times for each. Filecoin is the second highest wait time at 90 minutes. The
Holy
only
shit.
one that's higher is Bitcoin Cash at like 2 hours.
Damn.
So I just held on to it. The only point that the only thing I wanted to do was transfer $350 from Coinbase into Kraken without doing a bank transfer, and I lost $70 or $80 doing it. Now, I didn't know at the time, and I kind of guessed because I knew about Decentraland and Mana and 0x or whatever the fuck, ZRX, I don't know. They were all trying to do distributed internets. So I thought Filecoin, well, that's probably got something to do with fucking files, right? So I ended up going on the subreddit and being like, hey, is Filecoin, what is this about? Is it, I feel like it might be associated with something IPFS-like. And they were like, yeah, it's IPFS. Like, IPFS made Filecoin. So I kept the fucking Filecoin. I'm uninterested in letting go of the Filecoin. But that made me start reading about the Filecoin documentation, about how Filecoin is mined, about the fact that it does not prioritize speed of transfer. I learned that if you have a Filecoin node, it takes you months, not to become profitable, but months to become trustable. Because you need to store that data, and you need to verify the data, and you need to be able to verify the transactions that are around that data. I think it was last November or December that they were like, this is a great milestone. We've reached one exabyte, you know, like a pibby byte or whatever,
Right.
but with ex.
Right.
One exabyte byte of storage. People are paying for that storage. This coin is worth money, not because people are pumping it. It's not even useful in terms of transferring for transactions, because that's not what it's about. It's about archival. So this shit spoke to me on a fundamental level, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
And that's not going away because everyone's trying to do it. They're basically trying to find a decentralized way to get away from AWS, to get away from Google, to get away from OneDrive or whatever the fuck else. They're trying to decentralize this shit. It's not going away. It's too expensive for me to invest a significant amount of money in, but that's why I'm talking about buying a rig, because there were only, at the time that I read that article, that was several months ago, so it went from 25 to 50 bucks. I'm sure the miners have increased, but at the time, and the way you mine is literally by holding shit. You just hold data.
Yeah.
And
you're actually transacting a good.
Exactly.
It's not ephemeral. Well, it's technically ephemeral, but it's at least more grounded in a real service.
You're providing a service. And you can do independent, it's not just smart contracts. You can do independent actual transactions with real individuals. So you can do what's referred, my understanding is, I don't know shit about this, but my understanding is this is what's referred to as OTC trades. So if you're on an exchange and you say, I've got like 20 Bitcoin, I want to sell it at this price, but the current market price isn't that. So how do I sell it to another person? Well, the exchange has a separate exchange. They put your OTC offer up on that separate exchange, and then other people can, at the individual level, say, okay, I want to buy it at that, but I don't want it to reflect in the exchange. Like, you can do that except with... This is an idea for a business I had a long time ago. Obviously, there's no reason to, because probably other people have done way better. But if I wanted to do a local, say, file backup storage, whatever you want to call it, service, I've got let's say I got a petabyte of storage sitting in my fucking apartment. Okay, I've got a petabyte of storage sitting in my apartment. I've got a gigabit connection. And there are 7 local businesses around me, and they've got pretty important information they want backed up in the cloud. I'm a cloud. I mean, you can download for me at a very fast rate of speed. But, I mean, that's not practical. Oh, guess what? That's literally what Filecoin is. Now, how many other cryptocurrencies have something like that backing it? Not many.
Yeah.
So the entire point of something like Stellar Lumens, Bitcoin takes for fucking ever. You have to pay a premium to get your transaction verified at the front of the line. Stellar Lumens, so the reason why I made this mistake is because I took Stellar Lumens from my Coinbase account, transferred it into Kraken, and it took 10 seconds. And I thought, oh, cool, great. I didn't think about it because I haven't done this in so long. and I didn't bother to look at the shit, and I didn't really know what Filecoin was about. So obviously, that's not what it's going to be about. It's not going to be about speed.
Right.
But that
Right, which
this
is closer to like how a bank will work, right? Like I imagine, so hypothetical future where we're using, let's just say hypothetical future we're using all crypto, right? What you would likely need to do is you would
we
need
will
to
be, by the way.
Yeah, it just depends on how long. But essentially you will need to, basically like akin to like a credit card, like you will have, um, perhaps one of these quicker transaction um, cryptos as like your kind of your slush fund, right? Like this is what I
Oh,
use
dude.
to make my transactions on the regular. And then something like Filecoin would be more like your long-term monetary storage, right? Like, okay, like
Well, you don't even care
this is
about
like my savings
Filecoin.
account.
You don't even care about Filecoin. What you care about is whether or not your data is being stored properly. The people who care about Filecoin are the ones who are storing your data. You don't get like you don't even pay in Filecoin. You could pay in USD, but it would
Sure.
be obviously turned into Filecoin.
Converted.
Yeah, it
Sure.
would be converted for the quote unquote miner, but the miner is not a miner. The miner is a storer, and that
Yeah.
storer has a rig with, I don't know, 6, 7, 2 to 4 terabyte NVMe drives.
But if it's only useful in that particular context, I don't know. It seems like the Filecoin has to be usable for people outside of that context.
Yes and no. Think about a stock.
But maybe not. Sure, that's fair. You're
I mean,
basically paying stock towards.
But that's what
Right.
all of this is moving toward. That's why Bitcoin is invalid. That's why it's going to fucking just absolutely tank in price. That's why Dogecoin was never more about than not being Bitcoin. Like Dogecoin had cultural clout. It had the value of Dogecoin was the Bitcoin is the equivalent of the Fed.
Right.
Dogecoin
Dogecoin
is
was
the
like-
opposite.
Right. It was like the anarchist, like the kind of approach to
100%.
money.
100%. And why? Because it never marketed itself.
No, it was made as a joke.
Dude, there's a nigger coin, there's a MAGA coin, there's a fucking pick a word that's offensive, there's a coin of it. Like that's literally true. I looked it up the other day. I was like, I was just joking with my friend about it. I was like, pick a word, and we'll see if there's a coin. There's very hard to come up with a word there's no coin of. Like in 2013, every coin was invented. Like the vast majority just are defunct, right? Like I literally I'm running the Doge core, just the blockchain on like 2 machines. Any given moment, there's less than 100 people connected to it. I mean, with Bitcoin, it's God knows how many. And those people used to make money just verifying transactions without being miners. Not anymore.
Yeah.
But with Filecoin, it's all proof of work, and there's a weird thing that's happening where there was this divergence of proof of work versus proof of stake. Like you can stake Ether. A lot of this also you have to delineate by whether it's DeFi, like decentralized finance, versus providing some function. Like IPFS was about creating a decentralized internet. How do you do that? You do that by making sure that people store websites and all the files on the websites in a decentralized fashion so that nobody can be hit and taken out entirely. It's BitTorrent. Like it's like there's no way for me to not believe in that. The amount of storage that they have right now, they said could store like 7 internet archives or something like that.
Shit.
Which, I mean, granted, the Internet Archive is just a fucking sliver of what's been created, but still, it's extremely useful. And
yeah, and as long as you can make it easy for people to maintain, because the thing about what you were talking about with the cloud providers. Those are services that are like maintained by those companies, right?
Right.
They provide feature sets that are
And they'll cut you off
usable
if you
to
say
customers.
or do the wrong shit.
So the question is, how do you make those services also decentralized, right? And so, like when it's arbitrary, like storage, like I imagined, like so for instance, is my storage of my files on like your computer and no other computer, or is like that storage also distributed?
It depends on how much you want to
That
pay.
makes sense. Yeah. Well, I get it. Okay. So,
But
it sounds
again,
like it
it's
gets
not
more complicated.
it's not going to be a lot. I mean, like okay, so how much? So one of the
I pay $20 a year to Google.
okay, and what happens if your files disappear?
I have a backup. I have my own NAS.
You do. But what if you didn't?
Then I'd be fucked, probably.
But
Because
what?
I could ask Google, "Hey, where are my files?" And they'd be like, nah.
Well, this happened with Amazon
Right.
recently, right? A shitload of
Yeah.
AWS instances just spun down, and everybody lost everything.
Yep.
So what did those
That's
people
why you always
get?
make backups. Nothing. I don't know.
Well, this is one of the points that they make on like whenever they're trying to describe, like they have a pros and cons thing, and it's not like it's the the technical and maybe financial limitations to creating a Filecoin mining rig. Which, by the way, the only reason I'm interested in this is because a Filecoin mining rig serves a purpose. An ASIC does not. An ASIC
Right.
creates hashes.
Right. It just burns energy to do math.
This is just a formalization of what I've already been doing for free.
Right.
So the idea that their pro and con thing is set up so they're okay, well, here are the pros of going with Amazon, here are the pros of going with Google. But it's not like if Dropbox had a pros and cons of going with Dropbox versus a pros and cons of going with Amazon. Like you're going to have a pretty clear fucking bias, right? There's no bias even. It's just like this is going to cost you. Like this is not normal. We're hoping it's going to be normal. That's the whole point of this project, but it's not normal. And if you do this, you're going to have these protections versus whatever. So like their idea of, well, what if your files disappear and you've got them on AWS? Amazon gives you a fucking credit. I mean, that's what happened when everybody lost their fucking servers that were spun up. Amazon was like, we'll give you $100 credit. You get free blah, 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 blah. And everybody was like, okay, I'm going to transfer or attempt to convert the credit you're giving me into man hours or whatever, right? So that's how they rationalized it. Filecoin's like, this doesn't happen. That's the bonus. Like so one of the things that is, if your Filecoin rig goes down, whatever you've staked or whatever you've worked on for that period of time, it goes away. Like the portion of it for that, whatever it is you lost, goes away. Whoever was paying for it, they don't pay for it anymore. But on top of that, your rig is deranked. You're considered less reliable. So the most reliable rigs are the ones that are given jobs, or if you want to call it jobs, whatever it is. But you can still make individual contracts in between people who want something stored. So I could set up a Filecoin server, and then you could be like, hey, I want you to store my shit, and I could be like, okay, we could set up an agreement between us individually, and we don't have to go through the network necessarily.
Sure.
There's just there are other currencies that are made for certain things, but people don't seem to understand it. They just connect all these altcoins to Bitcoin and think, oh well, Bitcoin tanks. No, there are days Bitcoin, yesterday, Bitcoin lost $4,000 and Doge went up fucking 3 cents.
The Bitcoin is just the American dollar, and all the altcoins are just every other economy on the earth, right?
Which is why,
everything dives.
Well, that's
not exactly, but
Yeah. The ones who don't offer any actual tangible service, yes. Which is why I'm only interested in the ones, I shouldn't say only interested, the ones that I believe in are the ones that offer tangible services. So it is the case that Ripple, for example, like Ripple's been adopted by a shitload of governments. Like it's actually pretty funny that the SEC is suing them because I mean, it seems like a fucking liability. The only reason I can think of is that they don't want Ripple to look like a security because it will undermine the US dollar. So, Ripple is a good example. Stellar Lumens, another good example. They're both just very fast. But it's fucking weird to me that Ripple, being what it is, functioning currently as a genuine method of transferring money as a payment. Like, I can't imagine why it's fucking 50 cents. It's very odd to me, but that's the function that it serves. But Filecoin is different. And there are other, right now, like there are blockchains that are dealing with ensuring an a blockchain that has integrity of things like electricity usage. So instead of your city electricity provider just being like, here's your fucking meter, you've got a blockchain. I used this many kilowatt hours today. And that goes into the blockchain, it's verified, blah, 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 blah. It's just DeFi. It's decentralized finance in different ways. And it provides the opportunity for communities at the, not micro necessarily, but it provides, it's a form of democratization. And I hate how people have abused that word. Like this guy who, I guess was I forget what he was exactly. He was one of the EOs, ex-EOs, of this company in Berkeley that created these little robots that delivered shit to people's houses. Sasha was his name. I forget his last name. But he took me on a tour, and everybody knows what these robots are. Like, we've been seeing them for a long time. So he took me on a tour, and I started arguing with him. Because he claimed that services like Uber and Lyft were, as he put it, democratization of movement. And I said, where I grew up in Indiana, the nearest large city where I could buy guitar strings was 45 minutes away. Do you have any idea how much that would cost for a fucking Uber? There's nothing democratizing about that. It would cost me 30 times the amount that the strings cost me to buy fucking strings. It's democratizing to people in large urban centers where you've lived your entire life. You don't understand anything about democratization. You think democratization is something that people deserve in large urban centers. Everyone else can fuck off and die. You don't care. It was a very awkward conversation. Either way, it's very clear to me that people like him and people who use the fucking word democratization with very little regard for, the full quote-unquote flyover states, are people who can't afford to democratize whatever product it is that they're selling. This is one of the reasons. This is what I don't know if you remember, but whenever I was when I was at Berkeley, I was taking this this class called the Social Implications of Technology or whatever the fuck. And the professor, the guy who actually designed the central grading system for all of the computer science department, Harvey was his name. He was pissed at us for bringing up Bitcoin because he was like, how is this helping what is the means of production? It was, I mean, I was not ideological at the time, so it wasn't clear to me that he was a fucking communist. But he was like, what are the means of production? What do you do? And I was like, what do you mean? It's allowing people to mine the coin. There's no company involved. This is before ASICs, well before ASICs. And he was like, I don't get it. This seems like another blah 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 blah. He ended up, I guess, inadvertently being correct that this would. He didn't, he didn't guess that this would happen, but he obviously knew that it would. There's no way for, this to not go into the ASIC territory. But he also hated the concept in general that people with computers could make money off of Bitcoin while not actually generating anything of value. And I was like, you have a point there. But also...
Right. Well, I mean, that's basically the stock market just turned digital.
Exactly, which is why he hated it, and I completely understand. But that stuck in my head. Like, you're right, obviously. Nobody's providing anything of value. What does that mean? It's one reason I never bought crypto up until now. Because I found coins that the concept of a decentralized network evolved to the point where people were finally creating blockchains that were providing value in a real commoditized way. And nobody seems to recognize it. Which is, to me, this is why I'm willing to lose money.
So I've gone to numerous tech conferences over the last couple of years, and fucking blockchain comes up every time. And it's just a lot of people talking about blockchain, but there was very few people talking about actually how to use blockchain.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Using it for any. It was just like, oh, blockchain. It was like a buzzword, right? It was just like, oh, okay, this is like the.
I mean, pick a popular concept, and that's equity, diversity. What the fuck does that mean?
So it's,
But I saw usage, like, at least in Silicon Valley, there were real applications for it, like the electricity grid. Like, if you want to make sure that people have a reason to invest in green tech in an urban environment, you better have a fucking blockchain. Because there's no reason for them to trust your fucking infrastructure that has been routinely fucking up. Like, I'm going to trust your fucking... Who are you using to run your numbers? Because if I produce more electricity than I use, and I want to send that back, and I want to make sure that I get a credit for that is equitable to whatever it is that I sent in, well, I better be able to fucking verify it. And that's one of the reasons why people are so upset about this. That's why Bill Gates doesn't like this shit. This is literally democratization. This is returning to the people the means of production. Which is fucking weird to me. That everybody is just like communism. Yeah, I'm only upset about the part of communism where millions of people die. I'm okay with
on the whole authoritarian front loading.
Well, it's hard to be authoritarian whenever literally the people have the means of production, but that's never what communism was about. It was about enslaving the people so that they become the means of production. It was not about giving them. That's how it turned out, anyway. The rhetoric is all about giving the people the means of production, but the end result? That's not what the end result was. The end result was ensuring that the people become the means of production. It's just a different type of capitalism, where nobody gets any capital.
So it's even worse.
Even worse.
At least there's a chance. There's at least with capitalism, there's a chance you can become rich.
Exactly. At least with capitalism, there's some way of behaving or some way of gamifying the system where you aren't a slave. But even when you're a slave, generally speaking, I don't know if generally speaking is the correct phrase, but even when you're a slave that is the envy of all the other slaves. You don't even feel necessarily like a slave, which is subversive and not good, but...
Right, which is where most of us are. I know I'm in that spot.
I mean,
I make quite a bit of money, but at the same time, I know that it'll all come crashing down if I don't maintain it. Slave in the broader context. Obviously, I'm not like being beaten. You know, I feel like a lot of people talk about like wage, and it's like, yes, it's slavery to an extent, but like we're not talking about like serious levels of oppression and like.
Yeah, we're talking about relative first world slavery, which unfortunately has been co-opted to mean my wages are actually tied to the thing that I'm providing to you in terms of work.
Right. I have to go to work in order to make the money and die. Like, I think it's the not dying part, but even then, like, likelihood of me just dying is pretty low.
it's extremely low.
because we actually have like means of right. We have unemployment, we have bankruptcy, we have all these systems in place explicitly to prevent you from dying.
We're more of a
right?
socialist
Like,
state than China has ever been.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah.
We're better communists than them.
We're better communists than them, and they're better capitalists than us.
That's funny because it's true.
I'll have to mention that to one of my friends.
I mean,
We're better
practically
socialists
speaking.
than China. They're better capitalists than we are.
I mean,
oh, the bitter irony.
that's if you watch like right wing talking points. I don't know, because people like Michael Malice are not right wing at all. Like not at all. So you look at people who I guess are, what would you call them? Heterodox, and they say this kind of shit. They're like, look, if you want to see the worst of the worst whenever it comes to unchecked capitalism, take a look at China. All right? Suicide nets, that's the worst of the worst when it comes to unchecked capitalism. Because there's no moment at which the Chinese government could not come in and say, Foxconn, you're ours now. You are going to pay them way fucking more. You're going to drastically increase their working conditions and their living conditions. You're going to make sure that their quality of life is higher, but they're not doing it.
Yeah, they're not. It's because China doesn't care.
It couldn't possibly give a fuck less, because all of it is just a means to an end.
Yep.
And you could say the same thing about the United States, but
God fucking damn. Well, but I mean, like, you can also just fucking. Why aren't these people just leaving their job? Like, at least in America, like, people will just be like, fuck this, and leave, right?
In China,
like,
you don't have an option to leave your job, because you can't own land.
So
you're not allowed to own land. In the United
Yeah.
States, you're not even allowed to own land, because you still technically have to pay taxes on the property.
Taxes. Right. But I mean, like, in America, it's really commonplace that, like, I feel like there's very few people who will, like, commit suicide before leaving their job. Like, that seems extraordinary.
You don't need suicide
like,
nets.
Right. Like, people seem to, of their own will, go like, you know what? I have reached my breaking point. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to go get another job. And generally speaking, they can find another job.
Yep. And they will oftentimes find that job to be preferable. And a lot of times, the reason why the first job was so shitty didn't have anything to do with necessarily working conditions. It had to do with the type of person they were. It had to do with, this is how I want to live my life. I want to work this schedule, or I don't want to do this type of work.
We have a shocking amount of worker protection laws, which is a good thing in the United States. Like we have organizations like OSHA. We have organizations like the Department of Labor, right? Like, states have labor laws, right? Like,
I was not allowed to actually do a lot of types of work because of, that was unions, but the unions obviously have a lot to do with the type of legislations passed in the state. So, I mean, and I'm not saying that the unions necessarily are like actually, they're not actually advocating for workers a lot of times, but at the same time, a byproduct of the union, and still a byproduct of that is that in general, worker conditions will improve, even though it's for selfish reasons.
We have, like, you need to be able to, like, 40-hour work day. If you work more than that, you need to pay overtime, right? And so companies have to sit there and go, worth it to me to, because it costs me more.
And there are people policing that.
Yeah, exactly. And God damn it, you're right. We are a socialist state.
Really? I mean, like.
I knew we were, but it's weird to think that we're better at that than even other countries that profess.
Yeah, but China. China keeps a real good look. Like they got a. I mean, they're looking at everybody all the time. So.
I think the only country that might be considered truly more socialist than us like more than just minutely, because obviously like I feel like a lot of the European countries are better at it, but like in like only like slightly different ways, or just like they have like slightly better labor laws, maybe like you know not gonna die from not having a job kind of
Right.
structure, right? It would be a place like Venezuela, where they're like out and out full bore, like it's almost socialism taken to an extreme.
Right, which is one of the
To,
reasons why, like if something fails, everything fails.
right, like because the workers, I mean, when everyone is like, oh, well, or there's like laws preventing them from doing that, then everything just kind of shuts down, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah,
Like,
it's all or nothing. That's the problem.
yeah,
The problem is that whenever you take such a hard line stance that, oh well, worker protections are this valuable, or we're just gonna ultimately it seems like to me is the result of constant, and this is again maybe it's one of the fundamentals. It seems like an overarching theme: the constant abstraction of either talking points or concepts to the point where policy, the resulting policy, no longer has anything to do with what it was originally intended to do.
like I think the interesting thing about the trade-offs with like our labor laws around like overtime stuff, just as an example, is it's not a hard and fast like no you can't work your workers more than 40 hours. It's no you can. You got to be willing to pay the price.
Right.
And, you know what I mean? And it seems like that's the true for a lot of things. It's like okay yeah you can like do this thing, but it's going to cost you. Right.
One of the things that
Like,
pissed me off about most of my jobs is that I couldn't just forego my okay, I'm supposed to take two 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute lunch. How about no? How about
right.
I just
So
work through my 15-minute.
California is very strict on that. I found in Utah that's not very strict. Like they're just like, did you work your 8 hours? Yep. Okay. Now I think there's value in enforcing, at least saying like you like. I feel like the problem here in Utah is it's very common for people, and for that to be just like kind of, and almost to the point where it's like you have to skip your lunch. That's a problem, right? I think it should still be a, hey, I can't keep you here if you want. You know what I mean? There's no repercussions for that action. And so I think that's the upside to the way California does it, is at the very least it's compelled. Like it's like, okay, you are guaranteed you will have a lunch
Right.
break.
So for bad actors, the people who are working for bad actors at least benefit from that. But the people,
Right.
Who are not working for bad actors, which again, in a place where you just, it does take a certain amount of faith, right? Because you have to assume, okay, the majority of people are not bad actors. The only way laws like the ones in California are passed is if you assume that the vast majority of employers are bad actors.
Right. And what's funny is it breeds that kind of culture. So it's um it's interesting that you bring that up because California, it's like you not taking your lunch break is like it almost makes you responsible for not taking.
Oh, you
your lunch
are,
break.
yeah. I had
So,
fucking arguments with my managers about this. Like they were pissed.
and right, but it's it is very strange because I mean like what Tani does is Tani doesn't take a lunch. She just works through it and she
Yep.
gets done with the workday, or she gets overtime, right?
Right.
And the
I
company's
didn't. I
totally
didn't
okay
get
with
overtime. I still worked through it. I didn't give a fuck. It's because I didn't give a shit. So I was like, the majority of my job was so low impact or low intensity that I just didn't care. I just worked whenever someone needed me to do a thing. I was like, okay, I'll come and do the thing. Like I'm not gonna tell someone I'm on my fucking lunch break. I'll come and do the thing, and then I'll come back and finish my lunch break. Like, I get that there are people who don't like that. I've met some people who are militant, who are just like, no, I'm on my lunch break. No. Why would you do that to yourself? You're literally, you're imprisoning yourself. I never saw the value in it. Like, I get it if it's like your manager asking you to do something and you're on your lunch break and you're like, fuck off. But I don't know. It seemed to to me to be indicative of either an embracement of that very rigid culture, which is fucking just stifling to me, or I don't know. Aside from an embracement of that culture, everything else is just a type of embracement of that culture. It's like you've just not thought critically about this. Like, what if, like, is the culture so rigid that you feel like stepping away right now means you've just forfeited something because you think that the culture is going to it's not going to give you those 6 minutes back?
Right. Probably. And it's because it's a self-feeding cycle in that.
Yeah, which is why I always rejected it. I showed up 15 minutes late to work every fucking day. And I probably stayed late who knows how many fucking hours every fucking day. And I didn't care, and I didn't want anybody, there was zero interest for me to be compensated for that. It was my choice. I want choice, is what I fucking want.
100%. 100%.
That's why I fucking dislike this goddamn
4.
state piece of shit.
It's almost 4. I need to go to bed.
Well, just dreams of Gavin Newsom maybe getting recalled. And then replaced with some other piece of shit. Okay. Gavin, you don't know about this? So, I'll briefly, because it's 4. So, ever since Gavin Newsom got into office, there have been a group of people that have been trying to recall him.
The governor of California. I know who he is.
Well, I didn't know about this. So, this campaign picked up steam recently because of COVID. Because I shouldn't say every. There have been several governors, a handful, half a dozen, across the United States that have just fucking done the wrong things. Let's say done the wrong things, because killing 11,000 people sounds just too bad. So, aside from Cuomo killing 11,000 people, Gavin Newsom has repeatedly made decisions that caused the California unemployment, which is already very high, it's fucking spiked by 1%, which seems small. But whenever your unemployment is 9%, it's not a small thing, especially in a state.
A state of almost 40 million, which means you're talking about 4 million people.
Exactly. It's not a good thing. And so, but the interesting thing about it is, and this is the sort of, I don't want to call it bipartisan, because again, partisan is just boring to me. But the neutral take is, okay, there's a campaign to get him recalled. It only really gained steam recently, but it's been ongoing ever since he got into office. So it's not about coronavirus. It's not about any of that. It was just people who don't like Gavin Newsom, presumably conservatives, who are trying to get him recalled. And now that this, and I can't help. This is almost like whenever people were casting Trump's going after Joe Biden's son as him trying to, I forget the phrase, like the sort of sloganeering that was happening at the time, but he's trying to stop someone who could potentially run against him. He's trying to abuse his powers of office. This is the basis of the first impeachment, part of it. And my response to that was, if I'm the sheriff, and I probably said this before, but I have to say it again because it was, to me, I felt like a very salient analogy. If I'm the sheriff of a town, and I also own a liquor store, and it turns out, I've got some bootleggers who are moonshining. Is it the same thing as interfering? Is it the same thing as interfering or trying to prevent someone else from doing something legal if I go and I bust those bootleggers? So when Donald Trump was like, what the fuck? Joe Biden's son is working for Burisma and he's getting a shitload of money? Well, fucking investigate it. He was the vice president of the last term. Investigate that shit. Like, that's obvious. There's a problem there because this has been going back since he was vice president. So if he was vice president and this was happening, you might want to investigate that. To me, it's the same thing. A sheriff who owns a liquor store finds bootleggers, goes after the bootleggers. All of a sudden, you're going to look at the sheriff and be like, well, fucking of course you're going after the bootleggers. You don't want competition.
Yeah.
You do what you need to do. And I have probably said it. I don't believe for a second that Donald Trump did that because he was like, I mean, we've just got to follow the letter of the law, you know? I mean, there's just no other way. It's going to be hard, but no, of course. It was killing two birds with one stone, but one of those birds was legitimate. So
yeah, right.
you can't be like, you only did this because, no, that's sorry. They were breaking the law by fucking moonshining. You can't say that's the only reason, even if it also aligned with my interests. But it's the exact same thing here. So these people are trying to fucking recall Gavin Newsom, but they've got a good reason, even if they didn't before. Yeah. So I don't know what this. I mean, obviously they could be considered bad actors before, but now. I don't know. That's just how I looked at it. Because I looked into like the history of it, and it looks like they aren't doing it just because of coronavirus, which is what I think a lot of people look at it like. And they've probably managed. They've really leaned into it. Like if you look at their literature, they're like, "Oh my God, coronavirus!" and look at all the things he did. But at the same time, it's like, motherfucker, this is not what your website said 12 months ago. Anyway.
Yeah.
It looks like they're really reaching that, like they had a threshold of signatures that they had to get it on a ballot, and I don't know if they've reached it yet, but they were not very far away from reaching it before, and they had never come even close to reaching it in the entirety of his what do you call it? Yeah, anyway, yes.
Tenure,
yes. I just thought it was funny because it was like these motherfuckers don't care. Like it's not that they don't care about coronavirus. It's just that like this thing helped. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
But that's part of the dilution.
Yeah. God, I genuinely wish we could keep chatting. I am just so fucking tired.
I don't blame you. I woke up at 5:30 p.m.
I gotta wake up at fucking 9. So 5 hours. 5 hours of sleep is what I'm gonna be.
Oh shit! Be careful when you wake up. 3-hour cycles is that's the circadian rhythm.
I know. Pretty sure that's out the window. So. All right. Well, I'll talk to you later, dude.